Hello and welcome to my last edition of 40's on the 80's, simply because I'm not going to be in the 40's anymore after this one. But this is where we discuss, dissect, and sometimes trash our favorite movies, shows, and music from the 80's. Everything in the 80's is fair game. And today I'm joined by my fellow film analysts, Dynamite Dan Sampson, possible future winner of the British Baking Show. Hey, Dan.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm doing all right if I can get my voice to clear up a little bit. Rick, give me some of that honey. Stat. And we are also joined by Roughhouse Rick Baldwin, who traces his lineage to a pizza parlor in South Philly for some reason. Hey, Rick.
Greetings.
All right, so once again, I'm your moderator, Johan Redman, and just like I said, I have less time than Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy in a buddy cop comedy movie while I'm still in the 40s.
Wow.
Like that one?
Man.
48
Yeah, that
hours.
was really
right?
good.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
welcome.
Yeah.
So welcome to our 3-act overview of one of Stephen King's works, where he still wrote under the name of Bachman. This is 1987's Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Richard Dawson, Maria Conchita Alonso.
Welcome to the last 40s on the 80s.
Going out with a bang. This film also stars Jesse Ventura, Yaphet Kotto, and rock royalty Mick Fleetwood is also in this film. So let's take a look at what we have in store for 1 year in their future, because this film takes place in 2025.
In the book.
Oh, that's right. In the movie, we're
It's
already past
2017.
2017.
Yeah, it's
2017, that's right, Rick, yeah.
In the year 2017, an innocent man accused of a crime has a choice. Hard time or prime time.
Sensational. Perfect contestant. I want him.
He must pay or play the running man.
On your mark.
I'll be back.
Go!
The highest rated TV show in history.
Guess they want us to stay.
It's a game between life and death.
Give you a lift?
Arnold Schwarzenegger is the running man. He's playing for a prize. The prize is his life.
How about the lights?
The running man.
So, I don't know, which future would you rather be in, the film future or the book future? It's a tough
I would
call.
go with the film, and maybe try not even to get into the book because they are so dramatically different besides the premise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you could do a whole episode just on the book because the film just deviates so much.
So let's break this film down into its 3 acts. And as a reminder, the 3-act structure is our model that we're going to be using to try to keep ourselves from going down too many monkey holes. You like that? I changed it from rabbit holes to monkey holes. Or does that just sound wrong?
I don't know. Let's see if it sticks.
Monkey holes. It sounds kind of dirty.
It sounds like a dirty dessert.
Or something that you can pay extra for in Times Square on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Only
I
back
like
in the
that.
70s or 80s, though. I don't think they would do it today.
I like Rick's idea of it being the name of a dessert. I think it's a really good one. Like, see it on the top of the menu. Have you
All
tried our world-famous monkey hole?
Well, there's my challenge to you then, Dan, as our resident baker. See if you can come up with a dessert, and we'll name it the monkey hole. My
What is
gift.
the monkey hole?
All right, so let's get back to our 3-act structure here, and just a quick rundown on what the 3-act structure is. It's basically a model that's used for most fictional storytelling. So Act 1 is your setup, usually to establish the characters, their relationships, and the world they live in. There's some sort of dynamic incident which usually occurs towards the end of Act 1, where the main character has to make some sort of decision, or has to make a deal, or something that sets him off on a different trajectory from what his path was. All right. And then once that decision is made, that sets us off into Act 2, which is basically the confrontation or as we like to sort of see it, that's where most of the action takes place. It's the rising of the characters' awareness of themselves and what they're capable of. New skills might be learned, maybe a new higher sense of awareness, and there might even be the introduction of a love interest in this part. We move on to Act 3, once Act 2 kind of culminates or sort of crescendos, and Act 3 is the resolution. This is where the tensions of the story are brought to a climax. Everything is resolved, hopefully, unless they want to keep room for Part 2, and then things begin to return to normal. The Running Man story basically revolves around our main character, Ben Richards, who is a helicopter pilot. He has an incident at the beginning of the film which doesn't turn out in his favor, and he gets put in prison. So while he's in prison, this is his trajectory. There's nothing unusual, if you can believe it, at this point. This is his linear path. He escapes from prison. He tries to find his brother. And then in that pursuit, he encounters a female companion, tries to use her technology to hopefully escape this area, but then gets captured by the dystopian police. Now, based off of his size and his fighting skills and his ability to run, the television show The Running Man, they're always trying to find new contestants, and they see Ben Richards, and they're like, ooh, we want him. So this is where I feel the decision is put forth to Arnold. They're like, hey, we want you to run on the show. Initially, he tells them, fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's hissing over there. Or did somebody open a can of soda?
No cans.
Interesting.
No hissing. Are there snakes on the show this week?
I don't think so. I don't know where that came from. That was weird. But anyways, so he is forced with the decision: run himself as a contestant, or they're going to send his buddies who helped him escape from prison in. So he's not happy about it. He agrees. So for me, I feel that this is the end of Act 1 as he prepares to enter the Running Man game. What do you guys say?
Yeah, because that's when he has to make his choice. And that setup and how... Because if you look at it from the beginning through all the action, and then his prison break, everything happens really quick.
It does.
So they gets right into Act 2. So I would say that's where his choice is at. And it's kind of similar to the setup that they did in Escape from New York.
Right. So even though he makes the decision, there's still, the vaccinations, the GPS implants, as well as the whole dance sequence and introducing, this game show. So I feel like that's still kind of, it's a bit of a crossover area between Act 1 and Act 2. And then once he's actually strapped into the rocket sled and they show that his buddies are with him and they launch, that's where I say officially Act 2 begins.
I would agree.
What do you say, Dan?
Yeah, I love it. I think
Okay.
it's that's a pretty pretty clear point, because there's like the old world and then the new world that he enters into is
Right.
the Running Man, is the game, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I felt like this one was pretty easy to chop up into 3 acts. So basically the entire Act 2 is him and his companions within the Running Man game. A lot of different action sequences occur here. We get introduced to some of the gladiator-style hunters. What are they called? Runners? No, they're not called runners. What the hell are they called?
Hunters.
No. In the book, I think they're called hunters.
Oh yeah, what's the name of them?
Because they're taking bets, like, who's your favorite stalker?
Stalker. That's
There it
it.
is.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, all of that goes on. And I've actually uncovered some interesting stuff looking into the backstory of the various stalkers. So I'm interested to get into that here in a little bit. But I feel that Act 2 kind of comes to a close right around the time of the film where they're doing the deep fake fight between Captain Freedom and Arnold is linking up with the rebels. So you can actually mark it by a change in clothes, actually.
Yeah.
So they go from their yellow and blue Adidas sponsored Running Man suits into their tactical vests and sleeves. And Arnold's never at a loss to find cigars in this film somehow. But I would say that once they change their clothes and they're getting ready to take the studio, I feel like that's the beginning of Act 3.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys still on board?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So I feel like that can basically take us through to conclusion and frees us up to begin talking about this film.
Yeah, yeah.
When they started selling the option for the film rights and they started putting the production together, that some of the leads they originally had in mind before Arnold came on board was actually Patrick Swayze,
Interesting.
Dolph Lundgren,
That would have been
and
good.
and Christopher Reeves.
Oh wow,
Right.
really?
Yeah, I also uncovered the Christopher Reeve bit, and that was when it was the storyline was more closely linked to the actual book. And Christopher Reeve was supposed to be our hero, and he was going to play as Ben Richards was in the book, basically a father who needed money. His young daughter, was sick and in need of medical care. And one of the few ways to earn money at this time in the future was to actually join one of these game shows and hopefully get picked up. And I did go listen to the audiobook and also did some comparison shopping between the two. And yeah, it was much different, much stark. It was a very stark comparison between the book and the movie, with the same basic idea kind of at the center of it all. But there has been talk of them trying to market it again, to recreate the Running Man to more closely follow the book. So that is something that may come out here in the future.
Yeah, because Stephen King didn't like this film version at all.
Well, no, I mean, you can imagine also it'd be tonally so different from what the book was intended to be, which is like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a decent comparison. I mean, there's been plenty of
One just popped into my head. It's like if you've ever watched Monty Python and Flying Circus, they did a bit about the World Championship hide and seek tournament.
Oh, right.
Because that's basically the Running Man in the book was a 30-day competition. Stay alive for 30 days, you win $1 billion.
That's right. Yeah,
Whereas,
that's right. Yeah, because it wasn't so much you had to kill the stalker, right? You just had to not get killed, kind
right.
of thing. Yeah,
And it wasn't just the stalker; it was everybody in the entire world. Because in the book, they're putting out fake news and painting this Ben Richards out to be this horrible monster. Yeah. And anybody who helps to aid, capture, or kill him also gets a reward. So it basically turns all of society against this one person.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking, sort of, just tonally, if they had made it with Christopher Reeve, or even Patrick Swayze, to be honest, there would be a more of a. You could imagine this more of like a serious drama than an action film. And that's why I'm trying to think, like, what else? What other movies are out there could one draw a comparison to? I mean, I've said this in a previous podcast, but like when you think about what Deliverance was, would the version with Christopher Reeve in it, or if they do end up remaking this to be more akin to the original book, maybe it would be more in keeping with that kind of thing, where there is not like a superhero at the center of it who is going to be matched physically with these other people that are with the stalkers, right? Who are kind of like, they're sort of with the exception of Dynamo, they're sort of Arnold's physical equivalent, aren't they? They're like his peers. They're big, strong men, and it's like two gladiators really knocking 3 colors of shit out of each other. Versus,
they're superheroes superheroes for the silver screen, where the book was not. It was a guy who he had to do what he had to do to survive and take care of his family. So he's more human. Plus, we've all been exposed to all the different worlds or characters that Stephen King puts out because he is so prolific. And he never really makes people into superheroes. He has people who have super abilities, but they're still normal people that have to deal with that in the everyday world.
Yeah, and in that sense, Rick, that's a good point, right? When you think about the different types of characters that Stephen King has drawn for us, maybe it would be more in keeping with something like The Shawshank Redemption, like where it's an ordinary man in extraordinary circumstances surviving a constant threat that comes from all directions. So yeah, there might be something have more in common with the book version of this than the movie does.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting sort of mix mash to take sort of the tone of Shawshank Redemption, maybe mix it with some of the visuals of Blade Runner, and just really darken it, take out the comedy. And unfortunately, I think that just based off of how the book ends, you would almost have to go into this film ready for a letdown because it doesn't have a happy ending.
Right, right. Yeah.
Whereas
This
the
is
movie, of
the
course, you want to
yeah.
see your hero overcome. You want to see him achieve. You want to see him,
Yeah.
get the girl or whatever.
Yeah,
And
exactly. You want to
it's
see him walk off hand in hand with Maria Conchita Alonso.
because it is King, and he grew up pretty much a child of the 50s and 60s where he was watching tons of TV, taking in lots of content, and he was big at going to the drive-ins and watching tons of movies. So I think there is a lot of the influence of the most dangerous game in there.
Yeah, that's good.
And then you even see that in the 70s with like Death Race 2000, where it's like a
Yeah, that's
government
good.
run violent game. And then you just got some of the premise like Logan's Run. I felt very similar, where the chase is on,
It just occurred to me, the modern equivalent would be the Purge.
or the Hunger
Oh,
Games.
that's a good one.
Hunger
Yeah, or the
Games.
Hunger Games. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Battle Royale is another one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's not a new premise. It's just that I think visually, the Running Man by itself is a strong movie.
Yeah.
I think that they could be two different properties and not be in the same universe and tied
Yeah,
together.
I think that's right, Rick. It's almost not worth discussing the book, right? Because it's just they're so vastly different in their intent. Well, I did want to float one thing for us to maybe frame the conversation of the film as we're going to kind of get into the actual content. But like has been a discussion of late of the dystopian writers of the mid 20th century or the early 20th century, I suppose I should say, like who got it more right about the world we live in. So one of the things you often hear, right, is people talk an awful lot about we live in this kind of Orwellian world, right? And it's funny, both parties accuse the other of being the Orwellian one. So there's a weird kind of, I know I am, but what are you? But there is a discussion to be had between who got the world more, whose rendering of the future world was more accurate for how things turned out, whether it was Orwell or whether it was Aldous Huxley in Brave New World. Now, my feeling on this is I think Huxley got more things right about today's world than Orwell did. Because Orwell, while there was a technological sort of theme in his writings with Big Brother and the kind of that whole idea of being kind of, constantly surveilled and invigilated by this faceless authority, he didn't contemplate in any real sense entertainment or the kind of the mollifying of society through distraction in the way that Huxley did in Brave New World, where like it was all, certainly for the Deltas anyway, it was all about entertainment, and we were sort of these people were just numbing themselves through the use of drugs and other distractions, and that's what it feels like. I think that Running Man is a very, very contemporary story in that way. Whereas, like, if you look at reality TV and to a greater extent social media, like there's almost nothing people won't broadcast about themselves. So something like The Running Man is not that far away
No.
from how you see things going, right? Like it would not be at all surprising if things continued the way they did, that we would have a game show like Running Man. We are entertaining ourselves to death, essentially. When you think about the rendering of the worlds, I think that the Running Man reminds me a lot of this and has got a lot right about how the world has turned out. Similar to Starship Troopers, even RoboCop. RoboCop is there's huge satirical streaks running through the story of RoboCop, right? About how media is used and how entertainment is used and how crass and stupid everything kind of becomes while the world crumbles around this society. So I feel that's one of the things I wanted to put forward is like, what do you guys think about Running Man as a comment on where we stand and how close it might be to that kind of Huxleyan vision of the future?
I would like to quickly insert that from time to time, Dan has the ability to make me feel like I've just shown up to his cocktail party with Frank Sinatra and everybody in tails, and I'm wearing cutoff jeans, shorts, and flip-flops.
But you look good in them, though, man.
Well, thank you. But I'm aware of Orwell and Orwellian type structure, but Huxley I am not. And I was going to ask you, Brave New World, what is that? What's it about?
Oh, okay. So it is a dystopian novel I believe it was written in the 1930s. I want to say 1936, and it is about this future world in which society has been kind of stratified by the types of people. So they're referred to as like alphas and betas and deltas and gammas, and then you are, according to your strata, the social. It's almost like, I guess it's like a caste system in a sense. According to where you land, your life is either one of interminable drudgery or kind of non-stop entertainment and excess and indulgence.
Yeah,
And
that
but
sounds very
all the
familiar today.
yeah, right, yeah. All the while, both or all groups are essentially being manipulated by forces beyond their control. So that's kind of what it is. Where like Orwell's stories were really all about the control of the entire population. Like there is just, people were just, really reduced to their output, right, to their work product.
Seems a little more
Whereas,
influenced by socialist type concepts.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a commentary. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was a commentary on totalitarianism
Yeah.
and its various stripes, right?
Hmm.
Whereas Brave New World, I think, contemplates more of how entertainment and media and those kinds of distractions, certainly drugs as well, and that kind of excess can really just drain people of purpose in their life as well, just as much as being sentenced to a lifetime of drudgery. So yeah, Running Man just seems to have got more about the future right than say 1984 by George Orwell did, which was we're all going to be essentially working in labor camps until from when you're born, and you're born there and you die there, and that's just kind of the most you can expect out of life, and everything you do and think and feel and say and eat and experience is controlled, but not designed to deliver any pleasure. Like even intimate relationships between people in 1984 are tightly regulated, whereas in Brave New World, certainly if you are one of the higher strata people, they don't have those kinds of strictures on them. But there seems to be a lot of freedom for the people at the top and no freedom for the people at the bottom in Brave New World.
Interesting. This almost seems like a bit of a whirlwind of ideas, which kind of do link in my mind. Like both Huxley and Orwell seems like they were much further back projecting their ideas of one possible future, which has come close, sort of like Back to the Future predicted flying cars, which we're not quite there yet, but they are playing with the ideas. And then with things that did happen in the past, like the show American Gladiators, I felt like was a direct relationship to The Running Man.
Yep.
And there
Sure.
are more modern shows which have prize money involved, things like a show called Alone, where they take an individual to survive in the wilderness they only allow them to take, I think, like 15 items of their choice. Mm-hmm. And the idea is whoever is the last one to tap out wins the prize.
Right.
So it's sort of all of these things are coming together. I just feel that the sensitive nature of a lot of the population right now prevents something a little bit more Running Man-like, where you take, let's say, death row inmates and have them run the gauntlet to see if one of them gets a reprieve. While it would possibly be entertaining to some, other people I'm sure would have a huge problem with it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I want to know Rick's. I feel like I'm dominating the conversation, so I want to know what Rick feels about this. But the last thing I'd say is I do feel that we are not there yet. There is still a line today which, if crossed, even or people try kind of tip up to the line of it, people still do react badly to it. So I still do think there is a sense of humanity and standards that we have. So we're certainly not there yet, but it's not an unimaginable future. The Running Man.
You're up, Rick.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I think it's a combination of both, but it's in different stages. Because if going with Orwell, we look at how many people are already over medicated, and how with the streaming services and everything, you've got nonstop entertainment, everything right there, anytime that you want, 24/7. And then if you look where you've got all these companies buying each other, and you're getting one big company owning all these other small ones, eventually in the future, as tech goes, especially with AI, and it's already integrated within like the big state of everything, is that it is going to get controlled like that. Is that they're going to they're going to numb and entertain across the board while they're doing all this control stuff. So, because you're numb to it and you won't see, or they treat it as a benefit, but you're really losing something in regards to it. Like before you came on, me and Red were just talking, and I was talking about what words you can't say on YouTube now, and like how they really censor things because they could find that offensive, but in other ways they're controlling things, which is offensive to everybody as a majority. You know, don't try to control everything to put your narrative, and that's what I think this is going to come to where it does go back to a state-run system where you guys said was social, and then but socialism leads into dictatorship at one time or another. It eventually goes that way. So why not numb and entertain them so we can put that in place? So we'll start out as Brave New World and roll into 1984, and then since this is 40's on the 80's, we won't see the rest of that. Thank God.
Right. Yeah.
But the next generation, when I'm not envious of what they're going to have to go through, and if they're specially aware or if they just are kind of sheep into the whole process. But that's where they're going, especially because you're going to have those two classes. You're going to have poor and you're going to have the rich. So it's going to be just animals to them, and we will all be animals to that into the system.
That's an interesting point, Rick. So what if I follow you? Sort of, we are the entertainment and the distraction is just flooding our senses right now. Whether it's like endless streaming services, social media, TikTok, all of these things that just keep us distracted, keep us entertained, while individual rights and freedoms are like chipped away at to a point. It's like what's the expression, that thing about like the boiling frog, right? Like all of it, the water just heats up very, very gradually to all of a sudden it's boiling.
Right.
So that would be the kind of thing that we have where there's, as we are just immersing ourselves in whatever the latest TikTok video is, at the same time, individual rights and freedoms are being chipped away at, and we don't even realize it's happening. And perhaps we won't realize until it's too late. I do feel that I want to lighten the mood slightly.
Come on. I was really hoping to unlive myself at the end of this conversation.
Well done, mate. Excellent.
Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
There's a comment on that whole of like distraction and indulgence. You remember WALL-E, the Pixar movie?
Yes.
They're all on the spaceship at the end, right?
I think that is highly plausible that is going to be our reality.
Right. They're on the kind of the little hover scooter things with a screen in front of them and a big gulp, right? Like that is just 100% distraction, right? But yeah, that kind of commentary is everywhere. So the warnings are all around us, guys. But are we going to pay attention? That's the question.
But with that grim outlook on our future, next generation, it does make me appreciate when I watch these movies and go back. Because you go back and you think about that time and like, yeah, no matter what you were going through, I mean, we were all young, but things were harder if you think about it, but things were so much easier.
Oh, they were. Yeah, I agree.
Because you didn't have everyone have to be glued into everything. You actually, you would go outside to play.
Right.
You'd be gone for a couple hours. It was fine. It's just not like your parents were tracking you everywhere. It's just like the more and more tech we got, that's when it became more of a surveillance state, and everyone's paranoid about everything and getting offended by everything. So all these technological advances that make our life easier, they're putting us in a cage.
Well, the streaming versus broadcast shows, think about that, how television shows used to be an event. Like they have stats on like the last episode of MASH was like the most watched television show ever. Or I can remember being out in the playground and 7:00, Knight Rider's coming on. Everybody scattered to go home and watch Knight Rider.
Yeah. Mind you though, mate, like a lot of the streaming services now, they seem to be doing that thing where like they are just, they're doing more episodic television versus releasing entire. I remember the big selling point of the streamers at the very beginning was just everything was available to watch at once
Right.
of a particular series. That's where the term binge watch came from, right? It was because you could watch an entire season in one night if you felt like it.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
which feeds into the Brave New World. Just
yeah,
keep
yeah,
give them
exactly.
that
Yeah, that's right,
dopamine
yeah.
fix.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But I think where
But now,
the streaming shows fail, even if they only release one episode a week, it's still available that whole time. It's not like in the past when we were kids. If you missed that episode, you weren't going to see a rerun for quite a long while, especially if you didn't have your VCR ready to record it.
Yeah,
yeah,
because back
that's
then,
true. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, for the action shows, they didn't make as many during the season, but if it was like a sitcom, you knew that it was going to at least be 24 or 32 episodes. So you'd have to wait half a season for a rerun.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
episodic shows like Dallas Dynasty, where there was a story structure and there was one episode a week, people were really tuning in. They were making it,
Yeah.
that was what they were doing for that time and that evening. Whereas, the daily soap operas, you can probably get caught up with those fairly quickly, especially if they're being turned out daily. But for a weekly episodic event, it really did draw in the viewers. And, the whole Nielsen ratings. And I don't even know if that's really taken into account anymore, to be honest. I don't know where that stands.
No, I got a survey about 6 months ago.
Yeah, they still do use Nielsen ratings. One of the other things when we talk about us, like, being entertained and distracted. I mean, I think there's sort of like two things that are happening at the same time here, and one kind of explains the other, or one at least contributes to the other, which is that we now have access to all the news from all over the world at any moment, and more specifically, we're not just reading it, but we're watching it. Right, so the availability of video is a really big thing, and we're getting pumped full of this stuff all the time. So if you think back to, like, I mean, I remember reading about the Khmer Rouge, right? Just in the Sunday Times, and what was going on when I was very, very young. But you're reading it. It's text, it's copy, right? So you're just reading what was going on. Maybe there would be a photo attached to the story, right, in the newspaper. But there is a sense of dislocation or distance there, because you are reading it, so it's kind of, you don't really have the full human context of what you're reading. Whereas with video, not only are you learning about all of these horrific things that are happening around the world, but you can actually watch it happening in close to real time. So I don't think, I mean, this is not an original observation, because lots of people have said this, but that has happened very, very quickly for us, and I don't think our brains are ready to receive and process that much information and figure out what we do with it emotionally. So I think what happens then is people retreat to entertainment so as to soothe themselves from all of this horrific stuff that's happening around the world that they feel helpless to do anything about. So on the one hand, we've got video, like I say, almost in real time, of the worst, aspects of human behavior. So people are like, I can't deal with this. I feel like impotent to do anything to solve any of these problems. Therefore, the thing to do is to retreat to entertainment, because that's how I give my mind and my heart a break. So it's overwhelming what's happening in the world.
And
People kind of go into entertainment to get away from it, kind of thing.
And I think that was a beautiful introduction into what we're actually going to discuss with this film, because it's that introduction of video, which is almost the central point of this film. The deep fakes, the false news, the false video. Ben Richards basically goes against the orders to fire upon innocent civilians. He rebels. They arrest him. But the video that they splice together, they make it seem like he is refusing to stand down because he wants to fire on these people. So the video becomes his enemy at that point. The use of video by the corporations, and the corporations which control, which is kind of an interesting point in the film too, where Richard Dawson at one point says, "Get me the Justice Department, Entertainment Division. Better yet, get me the President's agent."
That's so good. It's such a great line.
The President's agent. Entertainment is controlling everything. And, you even see a little bit of that, with an actor like Ronald Reagan becoming president, with a reality star in Donald Trump becoming president. Arnold being governor of California. I have to say it the way he says it just because.
And in Running Man, Jesse Ventura, governor of Minnesota.
Right.
That's right. Yep. Yes. Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
So their visage, their notoriety, their popularity is really kind of what jump-started their ability to get into politics. Even Clint Eastwood, mayor of Carmel County in California at one point. I would have voted for him had I had the chance. I always thought it would have been a great duo to see Arnold and Clint Eastwood as running mates to take office. Just the amount of one-liners and commercials, I would pay to see that. It would be like a film in its own.
Well, if Clint had to do a press conference, it would be like the shortest one, because they say like his films when he's directing are so efficient and just go, and he gets so many setups for being at his age. He doesn't say cut. He's like, all right, that's enough of this crap, and they move to the next one.
They say he's notorious for coming in on time and under budget, and the producers love that. Yeah, he's just that experienced. News conference. So, Mr. Eastwood, President Eastwood, what happened over in Nicaragua? It's a clusterfuck. All right, so we are in Act 1 officially, talking about the Bakersfield Massacre, which kind of sets Arnold off into prison, where we also see some of the technology in use in the prison, which I thought was kind of interesting. The use of explosive collars around your neck if you go past that perimeter. Your head blows up. So there is the jailbreak, but Yaphet Kotto is well known for some movies as well. For me, what always stands out is his role in Alien, and also in there was a James Bond film, I believe it was Live and Let Die, where he
Let Die. Yeah, that's right.
He was the main bad guy. So we get to see those guys, and then the escape occurs. And Arnold, for later in the film, saying he wouldn't kill helpless human beings, has no problem with murdering several of the prison guards during this escape, which is kind of interesting. But I guess as long as they're faceless parts of the machine, it's okay. But then again,
I think you can get away with it. Yeah, there's they've guilt by association there, so I think they can go.
I suppose, but
and. I think in the prison scene too, it's a good nod when he's carrying, the medal on his arm, like a nod to Commando.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they escape. They link up with the rebels and Mick Fleetwood, which initially I did it, and I was like, why is that name familiar? But co-founder and one of the drummer for Fleetwood Mac, which is put out so many great songs over the years. There was another guy that was in the Rebels as well, Dweezil Zappa. Not as familiar, but that name, I was like,
Yeah, it's Frank Zappa's kid.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with the Zappa works, but
his name in the movie was Stevie, and that was a nod from Mick to Stevie Nicks.
Oh, very nice.
That's awesome.
So they get the explosives removed, and they kind of scatter to the four winds. Arnold, or Ben Richards' goal is to find his brother. And how does he get into his brother's apartment? They don't really show that. But the other thing that I find interesting is that he manages, while he's in this place, he notices ladies' underwear or garments. So in this lady's apartment, where does he find fresh clothes? You know what I mean? It's like he gets shaved, he gets showered, and he puts on some fresh clothes, which fit him, of all people.
Yeah.
But
maybe she is into, entertaining.
Well, yeah, she's in the entertainment business. That's true. But it's kind of interesting, too. When she comes home, she basically talks to Alexa. I sort of drew the comparison.
She does, doesn't she? That's true. She goes lights, doesn't she?
Lights, toast, coffee, Channel 3, Captain Freedom's workout video.
I still do not have any of that wired into my house.
No, I don't either. All right, so he links up with Maria Conchita Alonso, who also was in Predator 2. So it's kind of interesting, a little bit of a crossover here. She played a detective in Predator 2 and interacted with the Predator.
That's right.
Whereas Arnold's character also interacted with the Predator. So a little bit of a tie-in there. He uses her travel pass, and his plan is like, we're going to go someplace warm. And it's kind of interesting watching the technology of him booking travel plans using the TV and the computer. Rather archaic looking, whereas now we can just simply use our phone and say Expedia app to do the same thing. So they get to the airports, and that's where we get to, this part cracks me up too. he's jerking her around by her arm, like right in front of the airport security
Right.
that doesn't
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
doesn't even flinch.
They
Just
don't even, yeah, they don't even bat an eyelid, do they? It's so
no.
funny.
So maybe
Yeah.
that's just something that happens in the future. It's like you kind of
Yeah.
just have to force your
And
companions
we
along.
and we in the plot, we haven't met Killian yet, have we?
Well, it is kind of around this part. There is a scene where he shows up at the ICS headquarters in his limousine,
Yeah.
his stretch limo.
Yeah, and he fires the janitor, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's
So
like, yeah, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, we start to
Yeah.
get a little taste of Killian, Damon Killian, which is actually a really cool name if you think about it.
Yeah, so they are just thinking that they're going to escape at this point, right? Or like he needs to get out of wherever they are
Los Angeles.
to Los Angeles. Well, yeah, but I mean, like, and then they need to just he needs to sort of reset, right?
Yeah, whatever his plan is, we don't know.
Yeah,
He just wants to get
yeah,
out of there.
yeah.
And
So then she makes fuss at the airport, right? She elbows him, doesn't she?
oh,
And
she
then
full on back fists, hammer fists him straight to the groin, and he just kind of just makes a little bit of a face. She creates a fuss. He basically just throws some guys around and runs away, gets captured, and then later on, again, the deep fake film corporation takes charge of it and adds in the video to kind of once again control the masses. Makes it look like Arnold murdered a bunch of people while trying to escape, and she
yeah,
gets a little glimpse of that. That didn't happen. That's not true. So,
yeah. That's the first clue where she's like, oh, maybe he's telling the truth, isn't it? She's like, well, that's not true. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I gotta say, my love for this film comes wholly from one scene, and that is when Arnold, he agrees to do this so his friends don't have to be put in the show and run. He's gonna take the hit for him. They put him through the gauntlet of things, sticking the needle in between his fingers, and the fake sound of the air compressor vaccination, which doesn't sound like that. I mean, that sounded more like a hydraulic press at a car shop or something, instead of something that you would get a shot with. All that to say, my favorite part is when the lawyer is walking him down the hallway and then says, "Here, sign this. Use my back, convict," or whatever he tells him. If I ever in my life have the opportunity to do this, maybe when they're putting me into hospice or something as an old man, if I get the opportunity to sign a document on somebody's back that I can't stand and then just stab the pen and say, "Make sure I get a copy," I will reach over myself and turn the machine off and just die happy at that spot.
Yeah. Where do we go from there? So then he's
Yeah, they're walking him. It's like you get introduced to the show, basically. The big dance
right,
sequence. Here's
right.
the stage. They're showing all of these different watch parties happening. The ludicrous locker room of the stalkers, which may have one or two stalkers in there, and then is filmed by extras. People just in there hanging out with the stalkers.
Paul Abdul did the choreography for the dance scenes.
Yeah, I had read that bit of music is actually titled Paula's theme or something like that.
Yeah. And the whole Running Man dance, that was what she took other elements from other dances, but that pretty much was her dance.
All right, so we do have to talk a little bit about our main villain here, Damon Killian, played by Richard Dawson, who was a real live host of a TV show back in those days called Family Feud, which has since been taken over by Steve Harvey. But Richard Dawson was notorious for his love of the lady contestants, and he kissed every single one of them.
Yeah,
I wonder
that's
what
right.
the herpes outbreak was around that time.
There was a version of this in England. So in England, Family Feud is called Family Fortunes, but even I was aware of the American version of it having a host, and I suppose I just never, when I first saw the Running Man, I didn't really put it together in my mind that this was the same guy. But we were aware in England of the host of the American version just really stepping over the line with the female contestants, like kissing men's wives on the mouth, like right in front of them. I mean, it's just insane behavior. But
Well, they actually do a little
got
satire of that in the film. Remember, there's a part where there's the old lady that he talks to, and he's like, "How about a kiss, darling? But remember, no tongue."
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he does. Now, so that's why I suppose that proves he has got a bit of a sense of humor about it. But just that's wild shit that he would just like, he would just kind of come out and go, "Hey, darling, how's it going?" and give him a kiss right on the mouth. It's so odd.
I don't know if you guys knew this, unless you did some deep dive as well, but Richard Dawson also had a role on a TV show called Hogan's Heroes,
Yes.
Okay.
which was a bit of a satire on The Great Escape. But yeah, that's a whole deep dive story in itself.
I
Hogan's
hope we
Heroes.
can. I hope somebody one day does. You guys want to agree to do like a deep dive on Hogan's Heroes?
Now, that wasn't 80s. That would have been more 70s, wouldn't it? Or even 60s?
Yeah, but man, the stories that come out of that are so interesting.
All right, so anybody listening to this podcast wants to hear a deep dive on Hogan's Heroes, hit like, hit subscribe,
And leave a comment.
leave a comment, ask us for it, send us
I
money.
would do
I
it,
don't
and
know.
I would do some homework. I've never seen Hogan's Heroes, but I'd watch it, and so we could talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with the theme song. I think my parents even let me watch it as a kid just because it was kind of a silly show of all things. It's a comedy about American prisoners of war in a German prisoner of war camp. Yeah, Richard Dawson, shout out to the man for playing himself and doing a great job of being just a total dick. But yeah, he pulled it off tremendously. Sends Arnold and his companions into the maze, but before Arnold goes down the tube, I think I might have to fact check this one. Is this the first time? No, it's not the first time he says I'll be back. Terminator was the first time he says I'll be back.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
But he does work it in here. And Dawson's reply is only in a rerun, pal.
Only in a rerun. Yeah, that's a great line. That is.
Yeah,
Only in a rerun.
there's a lot of great lines in this film. First stalker that they send into the maze is, where is his name? I have it written down here. Professor Toru Tanaka. His real name is Charles J. Kalani Jr., who was actually born in Hawaii. But he's got a bit of a film history. He's been in several films. He's actually been in a movie with Chuck Norris. He was in An Eye for an Eye and Missing in Action 2. He was in a ninja movie. He was in Last Action Hero. And Rick, he was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yes, he was. He was the butler.
Yeah.
For Francis.
So what's his special skills as a stalker, though? He's like a ice skating sushi chef. How would you describe it?
He's got a hockey stick, right?
Yeah.
That has a blade on the end of it. And then when the kind of the compere is introducing him, he always said something that made me feel sort of quite sick. Sometimes when you hear things and you go, "Oh, that's gross." When he says about how he carves up, he says something, and he carves up his enemies into quivering bloody sushi.
Ugh.
And I listened to that and I was like, "Oh god, that's fucking disgusting."
Because you can really picture it. Great use of words there.
Yeah. I think quivering would just seem fucking horrible. But yeah, what's his name as a stalker though?
Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero, that's it. Yeah.
And then after kills him, here is Sub-Zero. Now, Plane Zero.
Plane Zero.
Mortal Kombat.
And what's great there is they go walking off and they kind of like give each other a little bit of love, a little bit of.
They do give each other a high five, don't they?
Yeah.
Or a low five, actually, specifically.
Right. If you think about the production of this show, they ask somebody in the audience randomly, supposedly, maybe it's a setup, who they want for a stalker. They get Sub-Zero. The first zone that they get pushed into is like an ice skating rink. So it just kind of makes you wonder, how is this maze, this zone set up? Is it like a big circle? They kind of get pushed into different areas, but
I think the suggestion is that they are doors open and close, and the pathway guides you to wherever.
Right.
It's like a coliseum for the old school gladiators.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But I think what you said, Red, in regards to the audience picking, I think they're plants.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at the big story, I mean,
right, everything's controlled.
Everything's controlled, so they're going to make it look like they have all this freedom because they're tricking them, but it'd still be all on the inside.
But the old lady at one point, when asked who was going to make the next kill, I choose Ben Richards. That boy is one mean motherfucker. So that was completely off script if the show was trying to control that one. So,
but I think to what Rick is saying, that is right, because everybody kind of gasps, don't they?
Yeah.
And they go, no, you have to pick he even says, I think, no, you have to pick a stalker, and she goes, "I'll pick whoever I want," and
Right.
I pick Ben Richards. Yeah.
So
So I think Rick's right.
for this society and this type of corporation to do a live broadcast is extremely risky. Makes you
Yeah.
wonder why they would even do it.
Yeah. And obviously that involving the audience and picking people out of the audience, that's a nod to things like The Price is Right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where everyone's up and cheering and they're all excited, and then they get their name called and they're thrilled, and
Yeah.
they can win prizes and all that shit. So it's kind of that
The
real
I've often wondered about the Running Man home game. What is that?
Running
look
Man
like?
home game. Yeah, oh, it's so good. It's a great detail there.
Yeah, I mean, do you have little action figures, or do you have to go to the pet store and get a gerbil? I mean, what?
God,
It'd be like one of
No,
those games
don't
that
get a
each.
gerbil.
Yeah, so after Sub-Zero is dispatched, the audience members next pick Buzzsaw and Dynamo, because he's like, I just can't choose, last year's champion. And that brought up a good point, too. How do you become a champion stalker?
Most kills.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're picked randomly by the audience members, I mean, how is that a fair test of skills?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If you're a stalker and you got a crappy gimmick and you don't get picked week by week, how can you be in the competition?
Right.
Yeah, because Dynamo sucks, doesn't he? Like
He looks like a giant, like Roman light bright.
Well, we got
Yeah,
to, since we're talking about him, that guy's actor's name is Erland van Linthe from the Netherlands, who has actually had some royal blood, if I'm not mistaken.
He unfortunately
And he
passed
died.
away right after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Died very soon after the movie, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
Died very soon
Poor guy.
after of heart failure. And he actually, his stats, it's like when you mentioned somebody else, a stalker, being able to match up physically against Arnold. This guy dwarfed Arnold. He was actually 6'6" and 340 pounds. Granted, it wasn't muscle,
Wow.
but the size of him was intimidating.
Yeah.
And he was actually an alternate on the 1976 Olympics for the heavyweight wrestling team for the Netherlands. So
No kidding.
he
Wow.
had some physicality about him. But I was surprised
Yeah.
to find out that he played Grossberger in the movie Stir Crazy with Richard Pryor and
Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, no shit. I found out
I
about
didn't
that.
know that,
No. So it's like, because you always remember in Stir Crazy him being just this big hulking figure, but then at one point he sings and has like the sweetest singing voice.
Yes, he does, doesn't he?
And
Yeah,
this guy is a legitimate singer. He was a legitimate opera singer and had a tremendous voice apparently.
Wow.
But yeah, the other stalker, Buzzsaw, he was in Scorpion King and Twins, but he was also a professional powerlifter. And his name was Gus Rethwish.
Right.
Buzzsaw, Eddie Butowski. Actually, they shared his
Eddie
whole name.
Butowski, that's right, yeah. And you see the first shot of him is him. Isn't he arriving at the building and he just cracks one of the fans in the face? And then,
The fan is super
they're all-
excited.
That's right, and he goes, "What?" And he wallops him, doesn't he? And then he sort of lifts up his motorcycle over his head, and
Yeah.
everybody's cheering, and then off he goes into the zone, kind of thing. Yeah.
I have to pause and take control of the mic here at that point because I had heard about a story which relates in real life. If you guys are familiar with the movie Jaws, and there is the scene where the little Kittner boy, Alex Kittner, who was out on his little raft, gets eaten by the shark, and the widow Kittner is upset and finds out later that Chief Brody found out that or knew that there was a shark but let people swim anyways, and she slaps the piss out of him. That actress, I've seen an interview where she says that people come up to her all the time asking to be slapped. They want to get the slap that Chief Brody got. And it just, the thrill of getting slapped by that character just kind of reminded me of that scene you just mentioned, Dan, where Buzzsaw arrives at the studios and one of the fans is just over the moon to be punched in the face by his favorite stalker.
That's right, and he even goes. There's a shot of him on the floor, kind of everyone standing above him as they're all still cheering.
Yeah.
And then he goes, he touched me.
Yeah.
He's like thrilled to have been punched by this fucking lunatic. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is also the part where Amber uncovers that there is edited for TV footage of the Bakersfield Massacre and the raw footage, and she gets caught and suited up and sent into the maze as well. And again, while they're introducing her, they're telling some lies about how she's had 2, sometimes 3 romantic relationships a year. Oh man!
So we're already well into Act 2 at this point.
Yeah,
right?
this is
Like,
Act 2.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because they're in the maze, they're wearing their blue and yellow jumpsuits. So yeah, like I said, you can almost mark this film by what they're wearing. So anything with blue and yellow jumpsuit is Act 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see. So we've got Amber thrown into the maze, and then once she gets released, we've got Buzzsaw and Dynamo. They come after him, and I think Buzzsaw is the one. They kind of get split up, don't they? Buzzsaw comes after Richards and Laughlin. And unfortunately, sad to say, this is where Laughlin kind of gets meets his demise.
He does.
And Arnold gets into a bit of a wrestling match with the chainsaw, and I've always wondered how the actor who played Buzzsaw felt to watch this movie with his friends and family, to where he gets the chainsaw come up between his legs, and you hear him go, "Oh!"
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Yeah. He gets a falsetto, doesn't he? I mean, it's just awful. Because then he's sort of saying to him, like, he goes, "I love this." He says this, Schwarzenegger, doesn't he? "I love this saw. This saw's part of me.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it part of you." And then Schwarzenegger bends it right back down and goes, "That's all right, keep it."
Yeah.
And then cuts his bollocks off. Like, it's fucking mad.
Well, it's more than just the bollocks, because when they cut to him later, he's looking at him. They show that it cut clear through his belt. It like cut the buzzsaw belt in half.
Right up into it, yeah.
So how far did he cut him up? Hard to say.
Man.
It may be just me, but if I was that actor, and say if this was the only movie I ever made, that's exactly the scene that I want. That's just me.
To be dispatched in the most gruesome way possible.
You go big or you go home.
That's a good point, Rick.
Yeah.
So they've been split up.
Buzzsaw's been cut in half.
Yeah. Dynamo goes after her, doesn't he?
Right. And then he goes to rescue, and something that's never sat right with me at this part, where he is running in front of Dynamo in his go-kart, and Arnold is like trying to climb up this little hill of rubble. Meanwhile, that dune buggy is probably going 40, 50 miles an hour going up the same hill. I think it would have ran over him.
Yeah, okay.
The big fail-safe here, he gets flipped over. I've lost power. Go to commercial. Cut to commercial.
Cuts commercial, yeah.
How is that supposed to help? You know what I mean? And he's not the only stalker to say that line either, cut to commercial, in this film. So it makes me wonder about past episodes of The Running Man where something has gone wrong and they've had to cut to commercial. I mean, maybe they have a rescue team that drops in to save the day. Who knows? But it's just an odd thing to say.
Plus, I think that's another subtle way of them showing, like within the big narrative of the story, that even if it's live, that it can still be manipulated, because they could always have some kind of another cut or an edit that they'll drop right. Say if they come back from commercial, while you were gone, they could show you a rehash of what happened during the commercial break, and they could rewrite the narrative of what the story is for the rest of the game.
Yeah, but if his life is in danger, what's going to stop his life from being in danger?
Well, I think so. I think Rick's onto something there, where there's like, you know how like reality TV is real in the way that like the Olive Garden is an Italian restaurant, right? It's like, all right, it's real. But of course, the producers intervene, don't they?
Sure.
And they get people to do things and play up certain parts of their personality. So I think Rick's right that what he's saying, cut to commercial, so the producer of the show can intervene and stop Richards from killing him.
But they
and then
don't.
They can edit it.
You know what I mean? It's like they don't come to the rescue of Buzzsaw. They don't come to the rescue of Sub-Zero.
No. Well, no, but maybe they have in the past,
Right.
and they're starting to realize now that Ben Richards is, he's like ratings gold, isn't he? Like he's actually winning, and everybody's super enthused about it.
Yeah, true.
So I think Rick's right there. He's saying like, the jig is up, right? Like this isn't really a fair game show. They intervene at will, as evidence later in a few scenes' time. We find out what the real truth is, don't we?
So hey, just for the sake of time, let's get back here to our axe. Axe, as Buzzsaw is cut in half. Yeah, Buzz sawed in half, and Amber asked what happened to Buzzsaw. He had to split. But this is also a key part, too, where Dynamo is a helpless human being, and Richards refuses to kill him. This kind of sets up, to later on when they show the actual footage of him from the helicopter that, he won't fire on helpless human beings. People have seen live. It's like, oh, those dots connect. Let's see. And then right around here is where they fireball, report for duty. They want to get Jim Brown into the mix as the next
Jim Brown, yeah.
So they also go back to the maze at this point, and then this is where the little private conversation happens. Killian shows up on TV and to talk to Ben Richards and wants to offer him a 3-year contract.
Yes.
And this is where my favorite line in the whole film comes in.
Listen very carefully, Ben. How would you like a 3-year contract, guaranteed, a cadre credit line, and a beachfront condo? Sound impossible? Ben, is a standard deal for a network stalker. And I know real talent when I see it, Ben. And I just hate to see you get canceled tonight when you could go the distance. Say the word, Ben, and you can be the one doing the stalking. What do you think?
You cold-blooded bastard. I'll tell you what I think of it. I live to see you eat that contract. But I hope you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine!
And he pulls the camera off the wall, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He pulls it off while he's delivering that piece. Such a great line.
Yeah.
So between the pin in the back and that line makes the movie for me. But yeah, Fireball arrives sort of like a angel or a devil from heaven. And Jim Brown is actually, he's got quite a list of things that he's accomplished in his career, besides being considered one of the best running backs of all time for professional football in the Cleveland Browns. He was also one of the largely considered to be the first black action hero in Hollywood, sometimes described as Black Superman or the Black John Wayne.
He was a real, in terms of civil rights, was a very prominent figure.
Right.
You think about him, you think about obviously Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There were certain athletes that used their celebrity to advance that cause. So I would think of them as really, really important figures in the second half of the 20th century around how, in terms of trying to right the wrongs of the past and create a bit better future. I think he's one of those guys that you would point to and say this is a guy who realized his ability to influence culture beyond just his capabilities as an athlete. And I always have great admiration for people like that.
But yep, so he arrives, and this is also where we find out Amber sees last season's winners of Whitman.
Yes,
Price,
in the locker room,
Haddock,
right? Yeah,
they're dead. So Fireball corrects her. No, those are last season's losers. But it doesn't work out for him. Arnold drops out of the ceiling like Spider-Man after pulling the fuel line on him. And once again, what's his call for help? Go to commercial. And Arnold asks him, how about a light? In this particular scene, maybe it's like Sub-Zero's little arena. Why are they keeping barrels of gasoline just laying around, or baskets full of road flares? Maybe this is Fireball's zone, I guess. It's possible. Gives him a light, blows him up, and about that time is when Captain Freedom gets called to duty, and he shows up in the control room wearing the most ridiculous, I don't know what kind of outfit that's supposed to be, but he can't even bend his arm. Hilarious to see Jesse Ventura getting all upset, and he tries to point at himself, but he can't with his left arm because of that thing that's on there, and then he switches arms to his other side to point at himself.
He goes, this stuff is garbage. It's really well done.
And what I was fascinated to find, because I always wondered about the bodyguard Sven. It's like, what's his deal? It's like they give him this big entrance later on in Act 3 where he comes walking up the entrance ramp.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, do you guys know what else he's been in?
He wasn't in the Street Fighter movie that came out in the early 90s, was he?
I didn't come across that one.
No,
but
maybe not. Okay.
Sven Ole Thorsen was actually Denmark's strongest man in 83, and him and Arnold were buddies from way back. But in Conan the Barbarian, Thulsa Doom was the main bad guy, and he had his two henchmen. The guy with the hammer was Sven.
Ah, okay.
All right, so he was in that one. He also was a stunt man, and he played several roles of people getting blown up or killed or whatever in Commando. So there's a famous photograph of Arnold and Sven together, both wearing camouflage pants with their shirts off, hanging out on set. He was in Predator as the Soviet advisor who executes the prisoner. That was that same guy.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
All right. In the movie Gladiator, Tigress of Gaul. He's the one who faces off against Maximus. You know, he's got the face mask that falls down. He comes out and he's, we who are about to die salute you. And they have the big fight, and Maximus, stabs him in the foot and hits him in the face, uses something like to kind of blind him. But that's him as well. Like the last one I'm just going to throw in here, if you've seen the movie Mallrats, he plays LaForge, the security guard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, he had a really good career. I mean, that's a good name, Gladiator. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is where the rebels link up with Arnold, and they see the deep fake video go on, and they change clothes, and now they are preparing for their showdown. They've got the code to be able to take over the satellite. And Arnold asked the question, why do you need guns to take over a satellite? He's like, I don't to take it. I need the guns to keep it, because all of the security of the corporation is going to try to shut them down. So they are on their way. The show of The Running Man is basically concluded as far as the audience is concerned. Mm-hmm. But stick around for Act 3. We talked about the change in clothes or the change in lighting kind of almost signals the changes of acts. So at the point of Running Man where he gets out of his blue and yellow jumpsuit into his, very snazzy tactical vests, which is not quite in the line of commando tactical vests, but something more along the lines you might see at JCPenney or Woolworths. Along with his stogie that someone ran out to the local 7-Eleven and fetched for him.
Sure.
I thought it was cute that his female cohort also had a matching tactical vest. Very nice of them to go out there, in matching outfits.
Yeah.
But I mean, from there, what more can you say about Act 3? It's shoot 'em up from that point. I mean, with a couple of good one-liners mixed in.
Yeah, it just brings it brings the whole thing to a conclusion. But really, there is no, one of the things that leaves it undone is there is the kind of the entertainment, that entertainment mogul of Killian is dead now, which is satisfying in its own way.
Right.
But the actual societal structure that is resulting in the oppression of all of these people apparently remains intact. So it's kind of an unsatisfying conclusion. Like there's nobody really gets it in the end apart from the obnoxious media guy, like the Trump figure.
With the satellite coming down and, maybe the people in the audience, and it was I don't know, who knows what the audience was worldwide. I mean, if it was a worldwide audience, maybe it had a larger impact, or nationwide.
I don't know.
Who knows?
If you think about like really what the problem was really with the world there, Killian was emblematic of it, but he was more of a symptom than the actual disease.
Right. To quote Marion Cobretti.
Yes. The thing with Running Man, that it just sort of like arrives at this thing where like the avatar of this dystopian future in Killian, he gets his comeuppance, and that is satisfying in its own way. But there are things in it, obviously, that you get, like, that we brought it up earlier, but the whole thing about Get Me the Justice Department Entertainment Division.
Right.
What that speaks to is that the entire governing power structure is in on it.
Right.
Right. So, like, nothing has really happened to them. Nothing has happened to sort of topple that empire, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. The real oppressors.
It's not. Not toppling the infrastructure.
Right. So that's why I feel it sort of ends. There was never in Running Man the real root cause of this. It was never going all the way to the top, if you want to say.
Yeah.
In the way that it may have done in other sorts of comparable stories.
Right.
But then again, I suppose it doesn't even really in RoboCop either, does it? Right. Like Dick Jones gets killed at the end of RoboCop, but like all of the corruption and all of the the theft and villainy still persists.
And it's funny you bring up RoboCop, because at the end of RoboCop, you get a sense that the top guy, the top CEO, is almost on board with Murphy. Almost like had a bit of a change of heart. Dick Jones was the bad guy in that one, and he's been taken care of. Mm-hmm. But then in subsequent RoboCop films, we see that CEO is still a piece of shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because he says to him then, "What's your name, son?" Doesn't he? And it's kind of he has kind of a warm tone to his voice, as if he quite like he likes this guy.
Yeah, sort of like a return to his roots somehow. He's been grounded for that moment, but he obviously doesn't stay grounded for very long.
No. Well, but this is the old adage about power, right? Like, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
So, like, if he suddenly finds himself, just the more time you have at the top, the less empathy and sympathy you have for the people below, and you start to just indulge your worst impulses. That's a very common phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I do want to acknowledge something, guys, just before we wrap. Anybody who's listened to this, who has read Brave New World, I know that I really shortchanged the story in my explanation earlier. So please don't light us up in the comments on this. But yeah, I know I gave a very light credit to the story, but I think I just like this one as one of those films that seems to have got quite a lot right about the tone and temperature of our modern world. So that's what I think is why I'm so fond of it.
Absolutely. And if you want to subscribe to Daniel Sampson's reading list or Richard Baldwin III's movie recommendations, here we are. Drop a comment. We'll get it started. All right. So, yeah, we can call this one a wrap for The Running Man. You guys good with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So stick around, as Arnold would say. And I think that was Predator, where he throws the knife into the dude's chest. Yeah.
That's right.
But, we look forward to talking with you guys and examining our future works as well. So thanks for joining us.
All right, mate.
Take care of yourself, Rick.
You too.
This is no game. Standing in the dark, I swear I heard you calling my name. And I knew things had changed. No pain, no gain. Something in your eyes just told me that this nightmare would end. And I had found a friend. Shouted from the highest steeple, let it out to all the people. Hey! Play it on the loudest speaker, burning like the highest fever. play